Welcome to American Politics with Harpreet Singh Poon. आप सब लोग यहाँ पर सत श्री अकाल, नमस्कार, आदाब and shalom. And like I always say, when you live in New York City, you got to know the cultures, and especially if you live in Queens, then it is totally different. And we are living in a city where more than 790 languages are spoken, and the people from close to 170 countries, they live in this city. And we have actually faced the first brunt of COVID, and the COVID is surging again, and I got to appreciate and say thanks to Honorable Mayor to giving us the time to talk about it so that our community, which is part of that brunt, and still because the COVID is raging again, and we are still getting involved in that, and our people are more into it, getting more sick, so that we can have the exact correct information not only about COVID but also because we are new immigrant, we have issues regarding about the schools, which Honorable Mayor has agreed to at least answer some questions, if not more. So first of all, let me say thanks for giving me the time.
It's my pleasure, Harpreet. I've known you a long time and I admire your work. And I want to thank you for the great role you played helping us achieve the census for New York City, which is really going to help protect all communities, South Asian communities, but all communities in terms of getting our fair share of federal support and funding and representation. So thank you for that great effort.
No, thank you, because there was something unique which you did, which I haven't seen since I'm here, any administration doing that, putting up a special budget getting the census done.
Well, others have done it, but I'll tell you what we did that was different was going deep into communities and supporting community-based organizations and understanding that the census would work if truly trusted community leaders were a part of it and the organizations that represent the community truly. And speaking people's language, as you referred to before, literally speaking whatever language people are most comfortable with. So the census was a real success, especially in the context of the pandemic. But now, as you said, our focus is on fighting back this second wave, linking up to the time when we have the vaccine, which thank God will start to be distributed, at least in some degree, this month, December. And, of course, reopening our schools this Monday, December 7th, and then continuing to have our schools open throughout. This is where the focus is.
I honestly, I was looking at it and I was discussing, and definitely because the decisions come from here. It's really so hard to make really right decision at this time because it's hit and trial.
It's also a moving target.
Moving target.
Disease is ever changing, the dynamics with it. The science obviously continues to evolve. It's been very difficult, but I will say New York City has proven the power of grassroots action again, because there was much more of a public education effort here. To get buy-in for mask wearing and other social distancing. That really worked to a large extent. And then having a test and trace core that could work with communities. But again, with test and trace core, Harpreet, we hired from communities. We hired people who spoke a variety of languages, who represented the experience of the community. Therefore, we have more and more people welcoming test and trace core to work with them, and that's allowed us to quarantine people who needed it, get them the help they needed, even if they needed food delivered to their home, if they needed a hotel room so they could safely separate from their families. It all works if you go to the grassroots and you really work with each and every community.
Yeah, I was about to mention the same thing that you just mentioned about during the hotel, where once you call 311 or the special number which they have, they come to your house, they pick you up, they take you to the hotel, they take care of all the medical health and all other issues till you are ready to get back into your family. And that's another, again, it's a great effort. As we are talking today with this surge, definitely you have more data on your hand. What do you expect based on what Dr. Fauci is also saying this holiday season for New York City?
Yeah, I spoke with Dr. Fauci recently, and clearly we're very concerned by the numbers we're seeing. There's so many more cases. we all have to take precautions immediately. And that's why our health commissioner, Dr. Dave Choksi, made a very public statement this week. Commissioner's instruction to New Yorkers that anyone over 65 and or anyone with a serious pre-existing health condition like diabetes or heart disease really needs to basically stay in the home, stay safe, not be exposed to a lot of people, unless they're going out for an absolutely essential appointment like a doctor appointment. This is one of the indicators of the fact that we have to do some different things very quickly. So what I'd say to everyone is, this is not business as usual anymore. We are now starting to repeat some of the problems we had in the spring. It will not be like the spring per se, because the spring we had no information, no testing, no ability to prepare.
And nobody knew what exactly it is. Because when I went in, even the doctor, they had no idea what the hell is going on.
That's right. And the doctors now, one thing we're very proud of with our healthcare system in general, specifically our public hospitals, health and hospitals, much better outcomes, much better approaches and therapies. The healthcare system is handling this second wave a lot better, really a lot better. And thank God we've seen relatively few people pass away. But even one person we lose is too many.
Oh yeah.
But that said, the numbers are growing and everyone must alter their behavior. No large gatherings, understanding even indoors to wear the mask. There's a lot of things we have to do differently.
Now, as we go into further 2021, finances are really in a bad shape.
Yes.
And we definitely have a change in the White House, whether somebody likes it doesn't like it.
Well, it has happened. You're right. It has happened.
We will talk about that a little bit. But how do you think you will be able to tackle, and when, the 2021 and onward, what is going through right now financially to keep the city where the city was?
Yeah.
Again, financially.
Sure. We obviously aren't where we were in so many ways. We've lost so much revenue. We have not gotten the federal support we deserve. We did get some, though. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Because of the previous stimulus plans, a lot of money at least went to individual New Yorkers. That helped stabilize a lot of families' lives. Some of that money ended up coming through as city revenue as well. So look, we've been able to keep our workforce intact by and large, keep city services intact, keep serving people, and I think that is the foundation for a strong recovery. The problem hasn't been up to now. The problem is what happens between now and when our next city budget is due in June. If we don't get major federal relief, then unfortunately you will start to see the kinds of cuts that really do harm the quality of life in communities and take away jobs from public servants who do so much for us. So that danger is distinct. We need to see if, with Joe Biden in the White House, he can move the Senate, and that all hinges on what happens in Georgia. But I will say, what gives me a little hope
And Mitch McConnell, of course.
But Mitch McConnell would love to not do anything. That's the problem. He's proved it. And really, so the outcome of the two races in Georgia is crucial. But also, Joe Biden, look, he does have a relationship with McConnell. He does understand the Senate as well as anyone in history. That gives me hope. And I think the demand that will be heard from the grassroots, including in red states, for sure, is going to be helpful. I always like to point out this last election because, Nebraska is one of the states that splits up their electoral votes by congressional district. 2 states do that. The congressional district centering on Omaha, Nebraska went for Joe Biden. So here you are, literally in the middle of the country, in what would be considered a pure red state by most measures, except except if you say, well, let's now look at it by congressional district. Suddenly, wait, there's an electoral vote for Joe Biden. Even in Nebraska, those senators are going to have people saying, we have to take care of our biggest city, we have to take care of our people. There will be pressure with every passing month as the effects of this pandemic deepen. So the fact that the original stimulus bills gave people some relief, people had, some savings of their own perhaps, ways they could get through, that's all running out. I think there's going to be a new wave of pressure from the grassroots, and that gives me a little hope that will force Mitch McConnell's hand and get us a much bigger stimulus going forward.
Right now, as we talk, discussions are going on between the House and the Senate and the White House
Yes.
about the new stimulus. But yeah, even though they are talking that they are close, but I personally, I always say, I don't trust Mitch. Mitch McConnell, not the Mitch.
He's
Mitch, but Mitch
giving you
McConnell.
reason. Yeah.
So that big jump in, giving the support to the cities, not here, but in states also, it should be coming. But do you really think that before Biden comes in, there will be something?
Look, there's clearly momentum these last few days. There could be something. What I want to emphasize is, if it happens, it can only be seen as a down payment and a beginning. It should not be seen as an end unto itself. The numbers I've seen, although it would be helpful to get any aid at this point, this projection goes nowhere near what will be needed by cities and states around the country to recover. And here's what I find strange. History has taught us this from the Great Depression and the New Deal till now. Even the stimulus we saw after 2008 is widely regarded as not having been enough. Why would we repeat the lesson when we don't do enough stimulus and therefore don't have as strong an economic recovery versus the great lesson of the New Deal, which was comprehensive stimulus and bring back the country across the board? The New Deal paved the way to the extraordinary economy that America had at the end of the 40s, into the 50s, into the 60s, right? That crucial moment actually sparked something that went on for many years. And to use a good New York City phrase, why nickel and dime at this point? So I do think McConnell has that instinct. But the fact is, there's so much evidence that if there isn't a bigger stimulus, you can't have a sustained economic recovery.
Yeah, but for me, there is another question linked with that, and that is every time there is a Democratic president, they start talking about deficit.
Right.
So that was what I'm afraid of, that once Donald Trump was in, they gave trillions to millionaires.
Yeah, for sure.
But as soon as Joe Biden comes in, I'm afraid that they will start beating Joe Biden with that deficit stick.
I don't think deficit is a believable argument after what Trump has done. I think the Republicans lost that franchise.
I hope
lost that
so.
legitimacy.
I really hope so.
I think they really have. I do think at some point, two questions will come on the agenda strongly. One, isn't it time to repeal those tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires and corporations that Donald Trump made? Because there's the money for a stimulus for working people. And two, the military spending, particularly the presence in Afghanistan and Iraq. This is going to come into question more deeply again at a point where if we can't support our own people, our own cities, our own states, how are we spending so much on military activities overseas? I think these are the questions that will get asked more and more, particularly if the stimulus isn't coming. It will create more pressure on these other questions.
Moving into current political situation, Joe Biden becoming president-elect and Donald Trump still in the White House.
Yeah.
There is a clamor out in the media where everybody is just going, if I may call it, going bananas, accepting Trump to concede. Even if he doesn't concede, how does it matter? What's your thought on that?
I don't
Do
think-
you want that?
I don't think it matters. I think if right now the states that had to certify their votes that were the crucial states have, the Electoral College will be seated in a matter of days and they'll vote. It's already done. The transition process is obviously now formally underway. This is just, at this point, superficial. I do think, Trump is creating less relevance for himself the way he's acting. And he will still try to be a very relevant figure. I'm not suggesting he won't be somewhere in the political life of this country, but I think he's actually hurting his position by seeming to be so out of touch with reality.
And also at the same time, when people talk about that he may be looking down the road 2024 and beyond, honestly, I don't see that it could happen. But then again, if we look back, what happened in 2016,
Yeah.
I still remember that the vote was on November 8th, but on October 27th, I on my show said that, Hillary will lose the election. And I spoke to Anand Gunasekaran, he's on MSNBC, you probably met him, right on Gracie Mansion. before the election, and I told him at that point, so my question comes in that somebody like Trump, he has taken America back international.
Yes.
Okay? Could it happen again? Because Joe Biden is the only one who really the people trust. He may try to bring us back, but would he be?
Look, I think the best way to think about this type of topic is to, I agree with you, learn from history. There was tremendous overconfidence in the Democratic Party in 2016. There was too much confidence in the political establishment and the pollsters and so many other things. I think people got a strong education from that.
Even 2020, right?
Well, I think in 2020 there was less triumphalism.
Yeah.
There was more questioning of the data.
Mm-hmm.
There was more rigor and much better turnout efforts to reach the grassroots. But we still have more to do. And so no one should, another great New York phrase, don't go to sleep on Donald Trump. Don't assume he's gone just because he's left office, nor his movement. Beyond Trump, there is Trumpism, which we're going to have to combat for years and decades. And it's just another version of a problem we had. It's not that different than Barry Goldwater or Ronald Reagan in some ways, if you think about it. Some of the same strands were running through their movements. This is a larger fight for the soul of the nation. It won't be solved in one election. We have to be ready to do a lot more in the next election. What I think is also clear, though, is not the kind of narrow sense of demographic change, but a deeper sense of both demographic change and values changing and different kinds of political organization. Highlights being Georgia and Arizona this year, but before Nevada, another great example. A different approach is now being used that could fundamentally change politics in America for the long term, regardless of Donald Trump. That's what makes me very hopeful. But Donald Trump will be out there, or someone like him. Democrats have to perform. Democrats have to be clearly serving the interests of working people. If Mitch McConnell stands in the way, it has to be abundantly clear he is only supporting the wealthy and the privileged. Democrats are fighting for everyday people. If that contrast is clear, Democrats will keep winning.
Before we end up the whole thing, Trump, by lying day in, day out, has actually brought down the status of the White House and the presidential status as itself. Joe Biden will work on that to bring it up because people trust him.
Right.
Okay? The question comes in, when Trump leaves, he's still going to use his Twitter power and his Fox and Friends to spread the false narrative. Do you really think that the Democratic establishment is ready for that?
I'm sure on one level, not yet is a fair answer because we've never had a situation like this. Former presidents have generally stood back. This is a brand new reality. Nor have we ever had a particular political figure like Trump, although again, whether it's other conservative leaders on the one hand or Joe McCarthy, who has a common connection to Trump through Roy Cohn, Trump is
that is so true. I know what you're
right.
saying.
I mean, that history is crucial because Trump is not a standalone American phenomenon. It's not like Trump is the first person to do the things he's doing. We have learned lessons over and over during history how to confront this kind of negative, divisive movement. And I often felt in the worst moments of the Trump administration that people were forgetting the lessons of how McCarthyism was overcome, which in its height was actually a much more powerful force than anything Trump ever put together, and yet it was defeated. So Trump will be out there as a voice. Trumpism will continue for a period of time. But the work that has to be done is every day in every corner of America. Ultimately, I believe that people don't want a divisive country. They don't want to have to feel bad about their president or who's in the White House. I think the future is bright because people are going to be animated by the fact that as strong as Trump appeared at one point, he was defeated and soundly defeated in the end.
And next year we have the city council election.
Yes.
And there are a lot of South Asians running.
Yes.
Anything
thing for this city.
Yeah. Anything that you would like to share your thoughts with those candidates who's they are running out there?
Look, I think it's fantastic there are so many candidates from the South Asian community. I think this is going to increase the truly representative nature of city government. It's going to engage community members. When people see folks from their own community coming forward as candidates. They start to get involved, they start to vote, they start to participate in their community much more deeply. This is good for New York City and its future. We want everyone to feel like a stakeholder. And to every candidate, I always say, bring your message directly to the people and listen to what they say. I'll tell you, when I was running for city council the first time in Brooklyn, I knocked on a lot of doors. But I didn't just say, oh, I'm Bill, here's what I stand for. I would ask people what they cared about. And if you listen, it helps you understand what you need to talk about that really matters to people. And how you have to honestly answer their concerns, not superficially, but from the heart. And I believe those are the candidates who win. Those are the candidates who win, yeah.
Thank you once again. Thanks for giving me the time to speak. And you spoke from your heart about all these issues. I really appreciate that. And until next time, good night and good luck.